It's the Morning Star Drive 117.8. You soaring up with sky, now's the time, don't delay. I'm sitting in my ride and it's time to fly. So let's realign, just listen and fill your mind.
Hey guys, how is it going? And welcome to the Morning Star Drive on 117.8. It is Friday, July 7th, and so happy for you joining us today. We are ready to start another day together with the Lord. So subscribe to us on YouTube, follow us on SoundCloud, and make sure to support us on Patreon. So today we have an exciting podcast for you. We have Until the End with Daniel Baker, the Wednesday Message Word Study, and of course commentaries, updates, and news on what is happening around the world in this history today. All right, everyone, how are you doing? Yes, it is Friday. I am so thankful and grateful that the weekend is here. The week has gone by pretty fast, but super thankful. If you haven't yet, go ahead, leave a like and comment to build this community. Really happy for everyone joining us every weekday on the Morning Star Drive. So let's get up and support each other each and every day. So yes, it's a wonderful Friday. Going to have an amazing time this weekend. A bunch of things going on. I got a friend visiting from Malaysia, so I'll be hanging out with them this weekend. Also, on Sunday, I'll be going to a football game, not soccer, like American football, but it's the Canadian Football League, so I'm going to be watching the game there. The weather's going to probably hit at least 30 degrees today, but only for today, I believe, but it's going to be so nice. My weekend has begun, so I'm super happy about this, and today I'm going to meet my friend from Malaysia. I've worked with her before on like some podcasts and stuff like that too, so I'm really, really cool, thankful that I'm able to meet up with her also. And, I want, if there's anything I want to show her is, not so much the beauty of Vancouver. I just want to show her how much better the coffee is here than Malaysia. That's my goal. It's not anything else. I just want her to taste the coffee and say, oh, it's really, really good here. Either way. How is your 21-day prayer condition going, guys? I hope it's going strong for everyone, and I hope that we can understand how important this 21-day prayer condition is. Remember, this 21-day prayer condition ends on July 18th, which is the last trial, right? That's going to be the last trial for Sunstein, and then it's going to be the verdict coming sometime after that, but all the information will come out on the 18th, and then, from there will be a judgment made, and we really, really need to pray about this, right? We got to pray for some, I'm not sure, more truth or justice to come out, but this is kind of the last big important condition that we need to set, okay? How was the poll for you guys? The poll is quite an interesting one this week. It's about when do you think a head leader should start head leading? And there's a comment that came out that kind of gave 3 different points. This is from Mason. Mason said, it depends when they came to Providence, understanding of the word, and their actions. And I would have to say, I would have to add, it would also be relevant life experience, right? Because you can have someone who came to Provi in their teens or even early teens, and they've been putting the words of God into action. They lecture and do all these things. But even if they're 21 or 20 years old, I don't know if they should be head leading a church, right? So I'm not sure what you guys put in. I put, what did I put? I put 30 to 31, I think. Let me just do a double check here, making sure that this is the one that I chose. I chose 31 to 35. And some people might think that's kind of late, but there's a reason why I was thinking 31 to 35, because, I became a head leader at an even later age, right? And I don't think I was fully ready either. But I think that we have to recognize all the different things a head leader actually has to do, and especially when it comes to older people, right? Like families and children. If you're in a pioneering church, of course, younger is okay because there's no families and there's no children to deal with. But imagine if you're a head leader in your 20s and you have to counsel people in their 40s and 50s, right? People who've been in Providence probably even longer than you. A lot of them who are blessed families have been in Providence even longer than the person who's head leading. Or what about counseling about marriage or counseling about children, raising children and stuff? And I think that would be something that does require a lot more life experience, right? And of course, I'm thinking very generally, because there are some situations where it does work, and some situations, and in some situations, I would say in a lot of countries, there is no choice. There is no choice but to put someone very, very young in there. But let's just say if we're going to take it and say what would be the ideal age for someone to start, I would say in their early 30s. That would that's something that I think would be proper. And if I were to take it to one step further, I would say that uh, like even look at the president of the United States. President of the United States, even President of India, they do have a minimum age requirement. It's not just being a U.S. citizen. They have to be at least 35 years old, right? You're running an entire country. You're dealing with other politicians. You need that experience. People need to respect you. And I think it's probably something that, like you can't just get used to it, or you can't really be good at that at such an early age in your 20s. I don't believe so, right? So if someone becomes a head leader too early, that I think there could be some big repercussions. And I've seen a lot of repercussions too, even for people who are not old, but yet they went through a very, very difficult time because they were prepared or the system wasn't working properly. Like for instance, some people go through a lot of trauma, a lot of hurt, a lot of discouragement, feel that they're not worth it, or they don't want to do this anymore. And people burn out because they're just constantly going through this because they feel in their hearts that, oh, I'm doing this for the Lord, I'm doing this for the Lord, so I have to endure. When the reality is you don't have to endure. You don't. Like if it doesn't fit, it's better to move on to another position, right? Because burnout's a huge thing, and I think it's something that happens a lot to full-time Providence people. You won't see it, like burnout exists, but it doesn't exist. Like when I look at all the leaders that I know and the ones that have stopped leading and such, like burnout is something that is more common with head leaders than it is with the vast majority of people that are working in the world. Like everyone gets to that point, they just want to stop. And they're just having a really difficult time. And some of them never want to run again. Like I had that view too for a bit. I was like, I'm never going to do head leading again kind of thing. But it's quite sad because there are some really good leaders out there with a lot of big potential and such also. And like even for me, if I were to say what would be the most ideal way, I would say that we would have a seminary or a Bible school, and head leaders would go to school for 4 years, then residency in a church for 2 years underneath another experienced head leader, and then they would have to apply for a church head leading position, and the churches would have to interview and do all those things that a regular job interview would do. Right? And I think this would give people the best chance for head leading for a long period of time without getting exhausted, burning out, or even dying in their faith, right? And I know this is something that I'm not sure if this would actually work, but they have something called a sabbatical. Have you guys ever heard of a sabbatical? So what happens in sabbatical is like a paid period of time to go and travel, study, or do something else besides head leading. A lot of professors do this. Like people who are professors will work for 7 years, and then they'll get paid 1 year to go travel, go study, upgrade their skills, rest, whatever it is. And I thought to myself, like, that would be kind of cool too. So that people don't get burned out. They have that year off, which I think a year is quite long, because what if you start losing that feeling of how to run or how to do head leading, or how you lose that kind of that feeling, that sense you have of dealing with people and such. But if you take a year is actually really, really long. But I was thinking to myself, what would be kind of cool is if we had like a floating pastor. I had this idea maybe 2 or 3 years ago. A floating pastor would float from different churches, and they would stay there and take the head leading work, like preaching and stuff, for 2 weeks, so that the head leader can go off for 2 weeks kind of thing. Do you know what I mean? Like, I think that would be kind of cool, that a floating head leader would go out, let's say every 6 months or something like that, where they could take a week off of the head leader so that they can go off, or 2 weeks off for the head leader, whatever it is. Because, when you look at vacation time, a lot of times vacation time is necessary. And I don't think we think of those things for head leaders, right? We don't really think about it. Like, no one's saying you got to leave kind of thing. Go take a break, because it's going to be better for yourself and for the entire church that you're not too into it, right? You don't get too deep into something where you're going to be stuck and you're not going to be doing, and then you're going to eventually crack and break because you have all this stuff that's just built up inside. So I was thinking, man, a floating pastor would be nice to do it every 6 months. Go to 2 weeks to each church, and then the church leaders would get 2 weeks off. right? And then the people at the church would experience a new leader just for those 2 weeks, have an enjoyable time, do the things that they need to do, and then they'll come back after 2 weeks, and then that floating pastor would go to another church and let that head leader off for another 2 weeks or something along that line. So I was thinking like that would be kind of cool to have a floating pastor, right? And it's every 6 months, and I think that would be kind of cool. What do you guys think about that? I think that'd be kind of cool. I would do it. I would be a worldwide floating pastor. I'd go to Australia, I'd go to New Zealand, I'd go to Europe, I'd go to America and Canada and float, right? And and it's not like you're not traveling all the time because it's every 6 months, and I think that would be kind of cool. I would super enjoy that. Well, maybe not so much the flying anymore. So yeah, that's I don't know. What do you guys think about that when it comes to how old the head leader should start? Because I do think it's something that we do need to consider, right? We do need to consider that I think it's something we should consider of having an age limit or a minimum age for a head leader, and that everyone would be quite comfortable with, including people who are a lot older. And maybe the rules would change for pioneering churches and churches without families and such like that too. But yeah, that's just something that came into my mind. But I want to know what you guys think about also. This next topic is something that it's about my rant on guys yesterday. And yes, thank you so much for all the guys out there that did comment. And some people said that they were offended, but not like they were jokingly offended, but they might not be joking, but just saying that they're joking. But yes, I did it was a rant. I apologize right now if I offended you guys on this, because it was definitely a rant. And the funny thing was, Chris Jansen, the guy on Provicom, he called it too. He predicted it. He's like going, yeah, and then, after this rant, after you like hurt a bunch of people, all the guys' feelings and stuff, you're probably going to talk about it in tomorrow's podcast and, apologize and kind of like restate your thoughts. And I was like, yeah, and in my head, of course, the pride comes in like, no, I will never. I believe in everything that I say. But then I was like, yeah, probably not. I'm like, yeah, I might have been a little bit harsh and a little bit too strong. But I was definitely generalizing, right? Generalizing, because I know like there are some members in America where straight out of high school they go into plumbing, and now they make like 6 figures, no problem. They're making really, really good money. And when I looked at that, I was like, yeah, that makes a lot of sense, right? Because some things don't require university. Some people don't, for the job that they're trying to do. And yes, apologies to Chris Jansen also. I'm not saying that, if the career is, I'm not sure what kind of delivery he's talking about. Because when I was talking about delivery, I was talking like Uber delivery and those different types of things for like fast food restaurants and stuff like that too. And I didn't clarify that. But yeah. So, but it's really about the men taking responsibility for their actions. There was actually something that I was really thinking about the other day, because I heard about, there's a friend of mine, and they made a mistake, and after they made that mistake, they get so embarrassed. They're like, oh no, and the only reason they became embarrassed because it came to light, like people found out about it, right? And that's when people get embarrassed and such. And I'm thinking to myself is like, as a man, one of the big things I think is one of the biggest qualities of a man is being responsible. And in being responsible, like if you make a decision, you have to own up to it. Like you really do. And it can't be like, I feel so bad, this, and this, because everyone found out. And I think it's probably for everyone too. We shouldn't feel bad because people found out. We should feel bad because we really didn't like the decision that we made, more than people finding out. Because I know a lot of people who won't do anything about it until they're found out. You know what I mean? Like guys should take, I think this is all people. All people should take responsibility for all the actions that they do. We do some terrible things. We do some sinful things, and we have to own up to it. We're like, yeah, I didn't do it. That's my fault. I got to do better. I got to be better, right? More than just like, oh no, I feel bad. But you made the decision to do that thing, right? And if you made the decision, you got to own up to it and say, yeah, I'm not going to do this anymore. But, in a lot of cases, I know that people are just saying it because they end up just doing the same thing again anyways, right? So, that's kind of one of the thoughts that came up when it came to responsibility, right? Having that integrity kind of thing. So, but I also agree that in my rant yesterday, some of my thoughts may not be relevant to some countries with different cultures and different ways of living, right? It's just different because some people are living in, some people are in America and Canada and Europe, which are first world countries. Then you might go into say some countries maybe in Southeast Asia that are not going to be as, as rich as those different types of countries, and the way that they live is going to be much, much different. So I was thinking from my own perspective in that matter. But like I said, super thankful for all you guys that are responding in the comments and on my DMs, and very, very grateful that you shared with me what you were thinking about it. But one thing I am quite surprised about is that there wasn't any girls that responded to it. I'm wondering what the girls are actually thinking about this subject too, right? My rant yesterday. Because I do think it's a tough thing to talk about in church, and maybe even a little bit tough to talk about with some of your friends. But I do think it's something that we have to, what's the right word? I'm not going to say fix. It's something that we have to encourage. It's something that we have to change. You know what I mean? So, yeah. So if any of you girls out there have any thoughts about this too, actually, you might come out in Provipuff also. But I do think one of the comments that did come out that I thought was quite interesting on SoundCloud was someone brought up, it would be nice to live as a traditional wife, to work from home, take care of the kids. But they actually said in the comments that they don't think that the guys are capable of, making that type of income. That's kind of like a reality check of what some girls are thinking, kind of thing, right? And I think to some extent it is true, right? And it is quite true. But here's something that's quite interesting. I listened to also in a podcast, the median income for a man from 25 to 34, the median income in America is about $47,000 US, which is not a lot of money. And the one thing I found quite interesting is when I was listening to these talks, the girls in the podcast were expecting their future husbands to be making money in $200,000, $300,000, which is the top 1% of the country. I heard if you make $400,000 US a year, you're in the top 1%. Right, that's the 1%er. So a lot of these people, we might all have different expectations. The wrong expectations also that, they should be making this much when the average is supposed to be 47,000, which is not, it's just not rich, or by any means, it is not rich. So when I thought about that, I was yeah, that makes a lot of sense too, because what if we have the wrong expectations? And that is something that I think a lot of us do have to think about also when it comes to that type of matter too. Either way. So yeah, it's so once again, guys out there, I'm not trying to destroy guys or anything like that. I'm a guy myself. And things change. Things have to change. We have to kind of get up and be better than we were the day before, kind of thing. All right? So yeah, it's Friday, and I was trying to think to myself, I don't want to end it on that. This is my first segment, and I don't want to end it in I'm so sorry, this is happening, oh my gosh, this, and this. So I was kind of thinking to myself what, is there something fun I can talk about? And I thought to myself, is there anything fun? But you know what the weird thing is? Have you guys ever had those brain farts? You're thinking about something fun or funny, but when you're thinking about something fun or funny, it doesn't come out. You know what I mean? It's just is that funny? And you kind of push it too hard where it's yeah, it didn't really work out. And that wasn't really that funny kind of thing. So yeah, I tried my best, but I didn't. But like I said, I'm excited this weekend. I'm very, very excited because especially Sunday, I get to watch a football game. The BC Lions, it's the home team over here. Last time I watched one of these games, it probably would have been at least 15 years ago. So I'm excited about it. I think the last one I watched was 2005 or 2006. It's one of those two. And when I watched that, and 2005, 2006 is such a long time ago. But I'm excited once again. I need to buy some merchandise, buy myself a BC Lions t-shirt and stuff like that too. But We'll see what happens here. And I'm also really excited today because I'm meeting my friend from Malaysia, but I get to go downtown. I'm going to meet this person downtown because that's where their hotel is. But one thing awesome about downtown is they have the best cafes there. The coffee there is so much better than my area, so I am looking forward to that too. Oh, yes. You know what I haven't been doing, and I forgot to do this, is the coffee tip of the day. Coffee tip of the day. Okay, so some of you are sending me pictures that they are doing pour overs at their house. Okay, they're doing pour overs, and you have a filter that you put into your pour. You use a filter and such. And one piece of advice I'm going to give to you guys, if you're using a filter, whether it's for brewed coffee or whether it's for a pour over, one piece of advice you always do is you have to wet your filter first before you go into it, right? There could be some residue of chemicals and other things like that that can change the taste. So make sure you run it under some nice nice filtered water first. Let it run through, then put your grains in it, and then you can run your hot water through it. And that would be my tip, my coffee tip of the day for today for some really, really nice coffee. All right. So there it is, guys. That is the first segment for today. Hope you guys really enjoyed that. Let's get into the first break of the day.
Please don't let me down, Lord. I know I can trust you with all my heart. So I'm on my knees, praying for you to always come through. Even if I pray all night, all I want is for your will be done. So I'm on my knees, praying for you to always come through. No, I'm not slipping through. No, I'm not falling down. The only thing that's falling is my knees on the floor. I'm praying, Lord, will you give me strength? Lord, will you give me power? I can't do this myself, so bless me in the morning hours. All the demons test me, but they will never shake me. If I pray, they hate me. If I pray, you love me. Connected with you is the only thing that matters. And honestly, I couldn't be happier while I'm praying on my knees. I trust you with all my heart. For you always come through. For myself, for my family, for myself alone I pray. Please don't let me down, Lord. I know I can trust you with all my heart. So I'm on my knees, praying for you to always come through. Even if I pray all night, all I want is for your will be done. So I'm on my knees, praying for you to always come through.
I pray to never just settle for good when great is available. Who's the mastermind behind this mind? I give all the credit to God, that's why I'm back. They mad that I made it, I know that the Satans, they hate it. I keep working hard just to make progress. Now I'm on 10, trust the process, ayy. Look at my efforts lately, I'm setting conditions daily. I'm praying on my knees, so bless me. Please bless me, please bless me. Tribulations always come and go, I will never stop, just always know. Your focus determines reality, stay solid, that's why
I'm praying on my knees, I trust you with all my heart. For you to always come through. For myself, for my family, on myself alone I pray. Please don't let me down, Lord. I know I can trust you with all my heart. So I'm on my knees, praying for you to always come through. Even if I pray all night, all I want is for your will be done. So I'm on my knees, praying for you to always come through.
SB.
All right, so let's get into the word study for today. And of course, every Friday we have the Wednesday message word study. So let's get right into it. This week's message: God, the Holy Spirit, and Jesus who speak now in this time period. And of course, the key word there is now. Right now, at this moment, at this given time. This morning we heard God, the Holy Spirit, and Jesus speak to us through the Proverbs, and we listen to it every single week. So that is the key, it's one of the key things that come out of this week's title. So when I was listening to the Wednesday message, one of the first questions that was asked was, do we really know the privilege, like what privilege it is to stand as counterparts to the Holy Trinity in Jesus, right? Like the question is probably like more of, do we realize the value? Have we realized the value even more at this time? And when we think of, like, as a lecturer, when I think about how to make someone realize how valuable something is right now, there's actually two ways to help people understand how valuable something is. And the first way you can look at it is like Matthew 13, verses 16 and 17. And Matthew 13, 16, 17 says, the people, all the believers of the past, the prophets, the judges, and the kings were all waiting for this very moment that we are living in right now, which means it shows us that it's very rare. And that's one of the ways for us to realize how valuable this time we're living in right now. Like, I just saw a cartoon. I don't know if you guys know who Calvin and Hobbes is, but in Calvin and Hobbes, there's like this, Calvin is having like a terrible, terrible day because of Hobbes, right? And then this girl, his neighbor, comes up to him and says, there's at that point there's 7, right? He says, like, there's 7 billion people in the world, and you're gonna let one person ruin your day, kind of thing, right? And it's kind of like it's showing us, like, look, there's so many people in the past that wanted to see and hear this very time that we're living in right now. But we're listening directly to it. We're the ones living in this time. And that's one way to really think about, oh, wow, this is a very rare thing. And if you looked at it right now, too, the interesting thing is, if you look at the 8 billion plus people that live in the world right now, how many of us are in Providence? It's such a small percentage. It's got to be less. Yeah, it's way less than 1%, isn't it? Like, if I were to take my calculator out right now and I take 8 billion, 8 billion, okay, my calculator, okay, 8 billion, and I divide that by, let's say, how many people in Providence right now? No, how many people in Providence? I would say, let's say 50,000 altogether. Divide that by 8 billion. And what's the percentage of that? It's like 0.0000006%. Like, that is how rare it is for someone to be in this history listening to the words of God at this time. And this is the thing that everyone's wanted, to hear God's word every single week, every single day, right? And we're in that position. And that's kind of the first way that you could look at it. Now, one way you can look at it is how rare something is, but the second thing you can look at is the demand, right? Like, think about if there's a huge demand for something, and everyone wants it, but you're the one that gets it, you feel like it's really valuable. Imagine you, like, there's one time, do you remember those, what were those keychains that had this little small egg on it, and then you hatch an egg, and then you're raising, like, this little dinosaur, the Tamagotchi? Do you remember that? So what happened was, they were like selling like crazy for Christmas, being sold out everywhere. And what happened was, at that time I was working part-time at the store, and at the store they were going to open to have these Tamagotchis being sold again, right? And it was very limited. And because I was right in front of the store, I got a ticket, so I'm able to buy one of those Tamagotchis, right? And I actually bought one, and all the people in my high school, the girls were all like, oh my gosh, how did you get that? And people were selling it for like you buy it for $35, but people were selling it for like $100, $200, $500 so that they can, give it as a gift for Christmas and such. And for me, I'm like, whoa, it was so valuable that I kept it instead of selling it like, oh, it's so valuable. And just to have something where everyone else is like, oh, I wish I had that, was something that it makes you feel the value of something also. right? And, we have to realize that from both of those perspectives of all the people, even in the former faith, how many of them are wanting to be in our position where they can hear God's voice every single day, right? Like we're in the position to listen to directly the words of God coming from the man of mission's mouth. It would be the same as us living 2,000 years ago, listening from it directly from Jesus' mouth. Where the rest of the world, they either can't hear it or they're still chasing for it. They're searching in the dark for what we've already found. And one of the biggest things that I think is a third thing that when I was listening to the message on Wednesday, the third reason that came up that was really compelling for me too was not only are we, this is what so many people in the past have longed for. This is not something that so many people would die for, that they want to be in our position. But since we hear the words of God, like the living word, and we, it changes into brides. But the one thing that it really made me think more deeply was we are able to make heaven on earth in the body right now. Like that's what we're capable of doing. And when I heard that, I was like, oh, that makes a lot of sense too, because not only are we getting something, but this thing is so valuable that when we have it, we can build the kingdom of God on earth, right? Like that Tamagotchi, yeah, it's cool to have that because everyone wants it, but playing that game for like 2 weeks straight, you're bored of it. There's no real value in my life. But imagine you have something and it would be equivalent to you gaining something that everyone else wants. And in the end, with that thing that you got, you can make $1 billion a day. And you'd be like, what the heck? I'll just work for one day and I'm done for the rest of my life, right? And that's something that we have to look at and say, oh, that makes a lot, we have to realize how privileged and how lucky we are to be here. And, when I think about this, I'm going to tell you, this is just my personal feeling. One of the things that really blows my mind, and it kind of makes me feel depressed or discouraged is, why me? Like, God, of all the people in the world, why would you choose me? Like, I look at myself sometimes like, God, I think you made a mistake. I think you chose the wrong person. I don't know what it is. Sometimes, I guess that's what you call, what's that word? What syndrome is it when you don't think when you don't think you deserve something? Well, technically, no one deserves it, right? I forgot what that's called. Someone's going to put it in the comments. Right? You have that syndrome where you think you're not worthy or you're not good enough for it. And a lot of times when I'm not doing well, my spiritual side is not as good as it should be. When it finishes, I'm just like, oh, I can't believe I did that. Like, I can't believe I did that. And God, why would you choose someone like me? You guys ever had those thoughts before? It's like, you hear so much in the messages like, you're so lucky, you're so blessed. We have the most valuable word. You have no idea what you're learning right now. And then the next thought you're thinking is, God, why would you choose me? Right? Why would you choose me out of all things? Like, of all people in the world, there's so many better people than me. And one of the things that made me more understanding of this is when something talks about you don't realize what God is looking at when he's choosing someone. And remember, when we look at the central figure lesson, even when it comes to central figure, God is choosing when it comes down to the heart. When we look at ourselves and we're like, oh, this person's like, what do we think? This person's better looking than me. This person is prettier than me, has more money than me, has more skills than me, has better speaker than me. Like, there's so many things that we look at, but when you really dissect the things that you think about, they're really physical things. They're not the things that God would look at. And that's why when I was looking at this, I was like, yeah, it's so true. We really, really don't know what God truly looks at, but he sees something that we can't see. Like, if you look at Paul was an amazing figure in the New Testament time, and he basically did more work than all the other people who were living at the time of Jesus. But Paul is a very interesting name. Like, the meaning of the word Paul, it means small. That's what his name means. It means small. And when you look at Paul's life, he always talks about, I don't deserve this, and that's why I have to run harder. And I think that's the proper mentality. Like to think like, wow, how could God choose someone like me? I got to live up to it. And I think that is the mentality that has to switch, right? That has to switch. We have to realize, even though we may not deserve it right now, but we have to make ourselves so God doesn't look bad and says, see, that's why I chose you. This is why you were someone there. And that's why Paul was like, he says, yeah, I don't deserve this. I was actually someone who killed Christians. I went against Jesus, but now I have to live that life properly. And he gave up his life for this history. And I think that's kind of the mentality that needs to shift and change. Paul, small, it means small. He looked at himself as such a small person, but it did not become something that discouraged him. It motivated him to do even better than what he was doing, right? The second point that was made, I like this point too, is one of the things that people don't like is getting things that they don't deserve, right? It's something like if you earned it, then you're okay with receiving it. Like for instance, imagine everyone thinks that you did something, but you didn't. And then everyone starts applauding you and everyone's cheering for you. People are taking you out to eat, even though it wasn't you. How good do you feel if you don't earn something? It's actually really, really uncomfortable, right? The most ideal way, the way that God does it is the best way, which is what? He makes you work for the thing so you deserve it, so you feel comfortable, so you know, like, yeah, this is something I should get. Like every once in a while, people love a free handout, right? Every once in a while, right? Every once in a while we get that. But in the end, it's really about, did you earn it or not? Are you earning the things that you are getting in life? Right? The greatest treasure that we have received in this history is not that God just throws things right at you. Take the car, take the money, take the business, take all this. No, it's you have to be worthy of it. And then when you look at that, it makes even more sense, especially when it comes to becoming the brides of God, where it's not like, believe in me, okay, automatic bride, you're done, you're done. No, you have to make yourself. You have to listen to the words of God. You have to change yourself. You have to make yourself better each and every day. And then we feel worthy that we are the brides of God. Then we feel worthy for receiving those blessings. Then we feel worthy to be in a relationship with God. And, you know, if we were to think about if there was anything that we were given that is the greatest thing we could be given, what is it? It's the words of God. Why? Because we get to learn about God. We get to learn who He is. That is one of the best things, right? So I hope that all of us, when it comes to understanding, even though we may not deserve something, or even though we may not see why we deserve it, we have to listen really well to the word, put our best efforts in to put the words of God into practice, right? And then, of course, there was a lot of different proverbs that came out. And the first one is one I really like, is you have to know how valuable the word is. Right? And the more you value, so if you got to know how valuable the word is, and the more you value the word, the more you're going to gain. Right? And then it was kind of like a second proverb added onto it, which was like, the difference between those that gain and do not gain is the difference between heaven and earth. Like that's the difference between gaining and not gaining. Right? And we have to look at that like, oh, I never thought about like there's such a difference between gaining and not gaining, and the way to gain it is not just listening to the word, is you have to value the word, right? You need to value those words that we're getting. Another one, some of these proverbs just really, some of them are, it just shows how valuable the word is. Like if you want to avoid punishment, if you want to avoid harm, if you want to avoid suffering, then you need to listen to God's thoughts, which comes through the word. Because no matter what in our lives, from God, at a certain point in time, we will all be paid. We will all be paid or punished for what we've done. Right? In the end, we'll all pay for it. And that's something we really have to think about. And we have to live in the way that is in line with God's thoughts. Or else what happens is, imagine you're choosing your husband or wife, but their thoughts don't line with yours. That means you're incompatible. And if you're incompatible, you can't get married. You got to think about it like that when it comes to your life of marriage with God. If our thoughts don't line up, just like when we look for a husband or wife, if our thoughts don't line up, we are considered incompatible. And if we're incompatible, then we can't be together with God. So it's something that we have to think about. It's like, where's God's thoughts? It's all in the Word. And we have to do according to the Word, right? And when we do according to the Word, we'll have the thoughts of the Holy Trinity. We'll have the thoughts of Jesus. We'll become one with the Holy Trinity. We become one with Jesus. So this is something I think that all of us have to really take into consideration. And we will, if we listen to the words and we put the words of God into practice, put them into our hearts, what happens is we become one with the Holy Trinity and Jesus. Now, how do I know if I'm one with Jesus? One of the Proverbs says, if you are one with the Holy Trinity and Jesus, their thoughts will touch your heart and you will know. Which means if you don't know if you're united with God yet, you don't know because you don't know. You just know because the thoughts touch your, when you listen to the word, like, that's it. Like, you've seen it. Sometimes people listen to the word, they're like, oh, that's the answer that I've been looking for. Right? They look and say, that's what we were looking for. It touched them so deeply. So we have to be those that listen, like the first part of the Proverbs is all about what's the value of the word. Know the value of the word, and don't just know the value of the word, right? But then through the word, as we focus and we listen, put into action, we become united with God, right? Then we get inspired by it too. And, I like this one proverb when it's talking about how to help us to realize deeply. And it's basically as simple as ask God to let you realize deeply. And I think sometimes we forget this prayer. We forget to ask God to help us to realize more deeply about something. Right? Yeah, we're like, oh God, please show me this, show me that. But sometimes we forget. We can ask God, let me realize deeply about, I want to know deeply about this more than anything else. Let me know deeply. And God will help us to realize. God will show it to us. And of course, the caveat is if it's appropriate, right? These proverbs that we're getting right now, it's quite interesting when you think about the value of these proverbs. There's one thing that Steve said in the Proverbs. He said, oh, by the way, I'm writing and recording these Proverbs. Why? They need to last for the next 1,000 years, which means 1,000 years after us, people will be reading the exact same Proverbs. That's how valuable these Proverbs are. Right? That's how valuable it is. That they will last and they'll be read to churches every day for the next 1,000 years. There was another section of the Proverbs, which was basically about understanding the spiritual world really deeply, right? And if you see the spiritual world, this is talking about how spiritual we need to become. Because if we are not spiritual, we can only judge by what we see, and people can deceive by their actions, by their facial expressions, by dressing really nice so that we trust them. But he said, if you look at the spiritual world, you will see all the deeds of Satan and the wicked. You'll see all of them. And that's why we have to be able to become more spiritual people. A lot of times, even since March, even since before March, where this craziness and chaos happened in Providence this year, many times we couldn't discern, we couldn't figure out what, if these people were good or bad, right? But it required us to be spiritual. It required us to focus. It required us to think deeply. It required us to ask the Holy Spirit so that we can discern between what is right and what is wrong. And the answer came out in one of the Proverbs is, well, how do I think deeply? How do I pray deeply? And the answer is, praying deeply requires us to pray with the thoughts of the Lord, which comes from the Word. So we can't think in our own way. We have to think according to God's thoughts. That's what deep prayer is. You connect on the same wavelength because we are thinking on the same level as God. So we need to be those that don't see things according to the way we think, according to our own level. We have to think according to the level of God. And of course, one of the awesome things that the proverb said is, if you want to know if someone's good or bad, if you want good discernment, you're going to receive revelation. Whether it's through your thoughts, your heart, whatever it is, or visions and dreams, whatever, you're going to receive it. You're going to receive it. So that's why we have to pray deeply. pray with the thoughts of the Lord. We have to pray in that way where it's so far beyond everyone else. So we have to focus our thoughts and think only about God. Focus our thoughts. So one thing here is like, this is probably something that was really for me. I'm not sure about you guys because I get distracted very easily. I'm a very like fidgety guy when I sit in one place. But it's one of the proverbs was distracting thoughts come, and then if when the distracting thoughts come in, then you're limited by those distractions. You're limited by them. And that's why we have to go far beyond into the subconscious where we cannot hear anything. So that's quite interesting. So it's not just telling you go into the subconscious, but one of the hints is when you reach the subconscious, you stop hearing other things around you. And I thought that was very interesting. Like that should be a goal. If I want to reach the subconscious, I don't hear the things going on around me. So I thought it was something very, very, very deep and things to think about there at that point also. Right? So, then we got into a different segment in the Proverbs talking about thoughts, right? How important thoughts are. Your thoughts must be perfect, but not just, it's got to be perfect in your everyday life, right? And the one thing I thought was interesting is it was connected to the spiritual world. So if you want to see the spiritual world at a higher level, then your thoughts must be perfect and get to that level first, right? So what level? Well, your thoughts must become one with the Holy Trinity and Jesus. And in order for you to do this, how do I become one with the Holy Trinity and Jesus? It's conversing with them daily, all the time. And what's more interesting is, the proverb said, if you converse daily with the Holy Trinity, then you will enter the spiritual realm, and that will be the highest level. The key point is converse daily. That's how your thoughts become one. Converse daily. Converse daily. Thoughts must become perfect, right? And this all comes back to, this is why you need to listen to the words well. The words contain God's thoughts, which we need for us to get into deep prayer. And we need for us to have daily conversations so that we can become one. Right? Excuse me. So I hope that, it kind of brings us back into how important the words of God are. Our thoughts have to reach a level far beyond ghosts and demons. Why? Because if you're above ghosts and if your thought level is above ghosts and demons, you can't be influenced by them, right? So there's that one point where something said he went into the spiritual world and he saw the people who left Providence. And he looked at them and they were in dirty rags. And he says, yeah, I can see your actions show through your clothing. I can see your filthy deeds and I can even see your insides, right? Actions and everything show in the spiritual world. And that's why sometimes will just look at someone in the spiritual world and know exactly everything about them. We can be deceived all the time. But once again, it goes to the point, you cannot be deceived in the spiritual world, right? You can't. So I hope that we will have that, the word became a big point in the Proverbs. Our thoughts become a big point in the Proverbs too, right? And, we're going to only be victorious against Satan's and demons when what? When we are strong in our thoughts. Like the thoughts are everything. The body can deceive, but you cannot deceive the spirit. Look at the soul and spirit after praying, and you'll know whether this person's a good or bad, right? On the right or the wrong, right? So, yeah, and many times, something kept bringing up the spirits that betrayed, which is quite sad to... I think we have to think about it more carefully, like how deep the Shimjung is on these proverbs, because multiple times he talked about the spirits of those who betrayed, which means he's looking at them, he's talking to them, and we have to look at them. We might not have that skill level, but Sunseem is trying his best to save them and pray for them too. So, I think you kind of get an idea of all the different things that are happening from it, like from what Sunseem is saying. So, yeah, it's a really tough thing And I think it's even more tougher for Sunstein because, when it comes to us and relationships with these other people, most of us don't have relationships with them, so it's a lot easier for us to look down on them or to not like them very much. But these are people that Sunstein loves so much and that we're together with Sunstein a lot too. So I think it's something that we have to take into consideration, like how much Sunstein is trying to pray for them, making sure they're doing okay, checking on them to see their actions, if they really have good intentions or not, and stuff like that too. So yeah, I was kind of like, I was really moved by that too, that he's constantly checking on these people also, not to check to say that they're wicked or evil, but he's probably checking on them because he wants to see if they're doing okay. There was this one thing when it comes to finding your partner, and I thought it was quite interesting. Of course I would, right? Is when he said, if everyone leaves because it's cold, but if you think strongly that it's not cold, your heart will change and you will think it's not cold, right? Which is right, really, really interesting, right? But then he went into men and women. If many men don't think this woman is pretty, but if one man thinks to himself strongly, oh, this woman is so pretty, he's going to marry her. Why? Interestingly, because the eyes saw first by what he liked, not discovering what others discovered. And this is a big problem. And I look at this like, yeah, this is a big issue. Preferences make you not think of big faults. And I think it's true when it comes to friendships. When it's someone you don't like, you can easily point out the things you don't like about them and you'll get mad and angry. Oh, this is why I don't like them. But interestingly, if you have a friend, you prefer them, right? You have that preference, which means that when they make mistakes, you overlook it. People live according to their thoughts. We live according to what we like. And we got to be aware. We have to be aware of what our preferences are. And, think about what look at the things that you like because you might have biases towards them. There was another one where he said there's 10 women showed one man and the outer appearance of this man. And all 10 girls liked this man. Then they were told the negative points of the man. And then all 10 said they didn't like him. Why? People value a person's actions and qualities more than their outer appearance. Because when you think about it, and this is so true, outward appearances age with time and they shrivel up like plants, right? That's what they shrivel. In the end, your looks will shrivel up, but hearts and thoughts remain in the end. Can you live with this person for the rest of your life when God is talking to us? Can he live with us? And this is why our thoughts have to be really good, right? Our thoughts have to be strong. Our thoughts have to transcend. And I think this is one of the last points I really liked about when it's talking about rice, right? Because the point that was being made is human beings cannot transcend the limits of human beings. Even if you make all the efforts, you cannot transcend being a human being, just like rice. No matter how you cook the rice, whether it's regular rice, you turn it to rice cake, you turn it to rice paper, whatever it is, rice will always be rice no matter how you make it, and no matter how much effort you put into it, rice will remain rice. That's just the way it is. Humans cannot transcend the limits of human beings. But if they want to, they must take on higher thoughts. And that's why you have to take on God's thoughts to transcend the limitations of a human being. It's just like rice. If rice is by itself, it'll always be rice. But you add beans, you add peas, you add barley, you add seaweed, you add all these other different things, you will transcend. We must become one with God to live at that level, to transcend our level right now as human beings. Right? So I thought these are really, really powerful thoughts. Powerful proverbs, and I hope it's something that that you guys will really enjoy. Actually, there's one last thing I want to bring up. The last thing I want to bring up was actually when it comes to us asking for God things, but God will use it for himself. And it's kind of like, that's selfish. But he's like, no, because if I use it for myself, then everyone can use it later. If I only give if everyone prays and requests something and I give everyone exactly what they want, then it only affects them. But if God uses it for his will, then everyone gets affected, like Wolmyeongdong, right? Wolmyeongdong was made and now everyone can use it. But if everyone is just given whatever they want, only they will be affected by it. And that's why it is far better to get for God to use it for himself, for the will of God, so that everyone else can benefit from it for the rest of their life. So, yeah, that part I thought was very, very powerful. Either way. So, yeah, a lot of different proverbs from it. I hope you guys really enjoyed it. I was looking at it like, yeah, there's so many good proverbs in there. I think there was it felt like there was 100 of them. But those are just some of the themes that I got out of it, and I hope you guys really enjoyed that. All right? So there it is, guys. That is today's Wednesday message word study. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Leave comments below if you have any other things that you want to add to it also. Okay? So, yeah, let's get into the second break for the day.
When I look at you, it's like I got the whole room on the tip of my finger, and I'm pointing it right back to you. When I look at you, it's like I got the whole universe, the whole universe. Never thought that living could be easy, so you taught me right from wrong. Now I'm free to be full of love, full of hope. I'm empty of all things. Now I'm living to make everyone come follow me. This is a life worth living that I know. If I love someone else, what would he give me though? It's like I'm floating on clouds, my feet don't touch the ground. Life with you is like heaven, look at what I found. You said believe in me, don't change, and then you'll see a life that lasts for all eternity. And I will never live to have any regrets. I know you're the best, I'll step to the west, I'll follow behind you step by step. Just like the stars above, we shining, shining. Look at the world, in my hands and the universe is my net. It's yours, can't escape from your love, it's yours. It's yours, can't escape from your love, it's yours. Just like the stars above, we shining, shining. Look at the world, in my hands and the universe is my net. It's yours, can't escape from your love, it's yours. It's yours, can't escape from your love, it's yours. When I look at you, it's like I got the whole room on the tip of my finger, and I'm pointing it right back to you. When I look at you, it's like I got the whole universe, the whole universe. You said believe in me, don't change, and then you'll see a life that lasts for all eternity. And I will never live to have any regrets. I know you're the best, I'll step to the west, I'll follow behind you step by step. Just like the stars above, we shining, shining. Look at the world, in my hands the universe is my net. It's yours, can't escape from my love, it's yours. It's yours, can't escape from my love, it's yours. Just like the stars above, we shining, shining. Look at the world, in my hands the universe is my net. It's yours, can't escape from my love, it's yours. It's yours, can't escape from my love, it's yours. When I look at you, it's like I got the whole room on the tip of my finger, and I'm pointing it right back to you. When I look at you, it's like I got the whole universe, 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 the whole universe.
All right, so let's get into the final segment for today and for this entire week. And every single Friday, we have Until the End mental health podcast from Daniel Baker. Hope you guys really enjoyed this. Today he's going to talk about getting out of a slump and jumping back into action. So I'm looking forward to this too, because I think not just me, but a lot of us are going to benefit from this also. So everyone, please welcome all the way over there in Korea. This is Daniel Baker with Until the End.
Hello everyone, welcome back to the Do It Until the End podcast. Now today, the Do It Until the End podcast is a very interesting one because it's the last podcast segment of the week. of the MSD podcast. And yeah, it gives me a little bit of, it gives me a reason to give you guys my best content, right? So today, of course, in the whole theme of mental health, I just want to say that this week has been a terrible week for me. Mentally, physically, I've been very drained. I would say that I've been in a massive slump this week. So, okay, I'm going to tell you a couple reasons or theories why I'm in this slump. So the first theory why I'm in this slump is because I have this massive project, or because the summers is so important for the SS. There's the SS retreats. Also, there's a good amount of programs and things I have to think and build from the ground up. All of those things give me a lot of stress, and it's gotten to the point where I had so much stress about this where I couldn't do anything by myself. My brain literally shut down for a day. So today is I'm recording on Thursday, and Thursday was I was supposed to wake up a good decent time, like 9 a.m. But do you know when I woke up? I was such in a deep slump, mentally, physically, where I couldn't wake up until 5 p.m. Literally, I woke up at 5 p.m. Right? It's kind of crazy how massive of a slump I was in. And so I'm going to talk about why it's important and how to get out of slumps, and why it's important to make sure that you jump into action with efficiency, but also as quickly as possible when you realize, the second you realize, I'm in a slump, that should be your cue to make sure that you're constantly getting back into action, and make sure that you take the actionable steps to get out of a slump. Yeah, so I had a crazy, I woke up at 5 p.m., right? I've never slept that long before. So I slept around 1 a.m. the previous day. So I slept at 1 a.m. It's more like 14, 15 hours of sleep. That means something's really off, right? Either I had some physical cold, or I'm just in the most craziest slump of my life. I woke up very, very tired, right? It wasn't even good sleep. I woke up very tired. I can see when I was in the shower, I saw that I had these massive dark circles, right? I even had a lot of bad thoughts, right? I thought I couldn't even record this podcast today because of how terrible the day was going, right? It's just a terrible feeling. It's 5 p.m. and you haven't done anything. You haven't even had your first meal by 5 p.m. I want to say that I haven't had these situations for a long time. I think it happens once every 6 months, and during COVID times it got worse. But it's something that I realize that I just naturally fall into slumps. Number one, especially when I have some massive, important things to do. It might be something that Satan tries to influence me. But it's also time when I have to think a lot, and I have a lot of pressure, a lot of outside pressure to actually do work. Then that's why I kind of crumble and I slip into a slump. So, yes, number one, the first actionable step is to meet people, right? Okay, so meeting people is extremely important whenever you're feeling some negative emotions that is consistent. So when you're having negative emotions for 2-3 days and you're realizing that there's a pattern in your thoughts, I really don't want to do my work today, or I don't want to go work out. Those were the intrusive thoughts that I was having for 2-3 days. And what was the thing that God really inspired other people to do? Other people called me, I literally, God worked in amazing ways today, because I thought that I was going to go to sleep again, very sad, and I was not going to get out of my slump. But through another person, God, it was 9 p.m. God called me through another person and told me, let's just go to a Pennyjum, or a convenience store. I'm so away from other people. I'm in like isolation. So the person picked me up. We went to a Pennyjum, and the first thing we did was we talked about the things that was why I was in a slump, right? And I told this guy, because he's one of the SS teachers too, right, that I'm in a slump, honestly, because of this reason. Because I have so many SS programs that I have to make sure happen, but also, make sure they, come to life. And it's very hard for me to do this by myself. So funny thing is, for the next 2 hours, I worked on making the SS summer programs with him. And what the amazing thing was that I had a lot of thoughts, but because I was trying to do it by myself, it was very hard for me to make any progress. And it was kind of like God saying, I was talking to him, and he was kind of like thinking a lot about the SS and how to make the SS really improve and have a lot of fun. And he was thinking a lot about that, and he was also getting some negative thoughts. So we're both kind of in that kind of slump. And it really felt like God told us to get together and really think about a plan for the SS. And we did. We came up with the plans that I needed to give the other SS leaders, also my head leaders. I have to give this plan to. So there was a strict deadline, and I was getting a lot of stress because I wasn't making any progress. And it's so difficult to make any progress for me when I'm in this kind of slump. So the first thing that God really helped me with is to meet other people, right? Yeah, just tell your friends, man, I'm going through some issues. I just need a person to talk through about it. I don't want, for men, especially for me, I don't want people to say that it's fine. I want a person to really make sure that our problems, I want to go through a process to make sure that this issue is resolved. That means that we're making an actionable plan. That's just for me, right? And that's what we did with my SS teacher today. And God really inspired me to get out of my slump like this. Make sure that if you're in a slump, make sure you have people around you. And make sure you're able to talk, and make sure you have people that really have interest in making sure that you get out of your slump. That's the biggest part. Okay, number 2, after you got out of your slump, you got to make sure that, or you have to find the reasons why you got into a slump in the first place. Now, looking back on why I got into a slump, there's a combination of the stress and pressure, right? However, I don't know if I went into this in the podcast before, but when I was young, when I was even pre-COVID, I had some major traumatic issues with some situations. And these traumatic issues, even though they're, I would say they're resolved within my heart, everything's resolved, they also, if I think about them, or if I watch media and it's too similar to the situation, then I kind of relapse into those negative thoughts, or it's like an automatic slump if I watch or see media or experience something too similar to my experiences, to my traumatic experiences. And I kind of get those feelings or those negative thoughts that I had. And to be honest, I did watch something, or I unfortunately came across something that put me into a slump or put me into a really bad mood from a week before. So from a week before, I was like, man, this is very depressing, but I have work to do right now. But when I don't have work to do, and I have a Thursday off, that's when the full slump comes in, right? And I slept 15 hours, wasn't even good sleep. Maybe I got a little taller, but not very beneficial for me if I sleep that much, right? So yeah, I'm constantly making sure that I don't experience that, or all of those traumatic experiences that I had that really broke me in the past, making sure that I watch or I don't watch those kinds of media, movies, animations, whatever I'm watching, making sure that I don't get too much into it, and making sure that I don't relapse into this kind of slump. Because it's kind of interesting, because this traumatic experience, I felt this massive slump for when I was in my senior year of high school, right? I think it was a combination of senioritis, but also this kind of like slump that I had. However, I want to thank God and to the person that really helped me get out of it, because I already feel amazing, right? I already feel motivated to do many things. So I thank God that this was a temporary slump. And because I've experienced these slumps, as I said, that went on for a whole year, right? And I didn't do anything to counteract it. What a stupid past, right? But as I said, these two actions can really help you get out of the slump. So number one was to meet people that will 100%, they're 100% there for you to make sure you get out of that slump. Okay? So that was number one. Number two, make sure that the reasons of your slump, and make sure that you don't get into them in the future. I want to hear you guys' experiences with your slumps or bad experiences that you've had. And I really want to ask, how did you guys get out of being sluggish or having massive slumps? Or how do you guys combat loneliness? That's one thing I want to ask you guys, because living by myself for 1 year, isolated from people, I don't have a car, so I don't have easy transportation. It is extremely easy for me to become lonely. And this kind of loneliness, it happens, but also it does not feel good, right? No one likes to be feeling lonely, right? No one does it willingly. So I want to ask you guys, how do you guys combat loneliness? And that's something I want to ask you guys. Put that in the comment section below. I'll maybe do a whole episode on that next week, answering you guys' questions, but also responding to your comments. So that's all I have for you guys today. To everyone who is going until the end with the Lord, let's walk this path together. Peace out, guys. Bye bye. Peace.
And thank you so much, Daniel, for another wonderful episode of Until the End. And he's doing such a great job. Remember, he's only 19 years old, doing a great job. He's going to be coming to the States probably within the next year, I believe. But I hope you guys really enjoyed that and gained a lot from it too. If you have any comments or you want encouragements for Daniel, go ahead, leave it in the comments below. All right. So there it is, guys. That is the end of this week's podcast. Hope you guys really enjoyed it. Have an amazing and awesome week. And we'll see you guys again on Monday on the Morning Star Drive on 117.8.
It's the Morning Star Drive 117.8. You soaring up with sky, now's the time, don't delay. I'm sitting in my ride and it's time to fly. So let's realign, just listen and feel your mind.
I'm burning with desire and the passion. Nobody can stop me when I'm like this. I got my head in the zone.